On the 2nd day of October 1942, in the North Atlantic Ocean, the British ocean liner Queen Mary struck the Royal Navy cruiser HMS Curacoa at full speed. The impact sliced the warship in two. 329 sailors were thrown into freezing water as the Curacoa sank in minutes. Survivors screamed for help and watched the Queen Mary sail away. She was under orders not to stop. That decision was never explained to the men left behind. During the next 3 decades, at least 50 more people died aboard the same ship through drownings, crush injuries, violence, and despair. And after the Queen Mary was permanently docked in California, witnesses began reporting the same thing again and again. Footsteps where no one stood. Voices calling from sealed compartments. Men in naval uniforms still walking the decks of the ship that killed them and never looked back. The foundation. The Queen Mary was not built to be haunted. She was built to be invincible. On the 26th of September, 1936, she slid down the shipways at Clydebank, Scotland, into the River Clyde. 1,000 tons of steel entered the water that day. The Queen Mary was the largest vessel Britain had ever constructed. Her keel stretched 1,019 feet. Her 4 propellers stood taller than a house. She could carry 2,000 passengers and 1,000 crew across the Atlantic in 5 days. She was designed to dominate, to own the ocean, to prove that British engineering could conquer distance and time. Her first-class cabins featured mahogany paneling and crystal chandeliers. Her dining rooms seated 800 beneath gilded ceilings. But beneath the luxury, the ship's architecture revealed its true purpose: control, efficiency, absolute mechanical precision. The engine rooms descended 6 decks below the waterline. 340 boilers fed steam to 16 turbines. Miles of pipes and valves threaded through the hull. And at critical points throughout the ship, engineers installed massive watertight doors, hydraulic steel barriers weighing more than a car. They could seal sections of the ship in under 30 seconds. They were designed to close with such force that nothing could stop them. Not debris, not equipment, not human bodies. The Queen Mary made 139 transatlantic crossings between 1936 and 1939. She set speed records. She carried film stars, our royalty, and millionaires. She became a symbol of British power in an increasingly unstable world. And then war came. In March 1940, the British Admiralty requisitioned the Queen Mary for military service. Her grand lounges were stripped, her swimming pools emptied, her cabins gutted and refitted with bunk beds stacked 5 high. She was repainted a dull gray. They called it war camouflage. Sailors called it ghost gray. The conversion transformed her into a troopship capable of carrying 15,000 soldiers at once. 15,000 men packed into spaces designed for 2,000 passengers. They slept in shifts. They ate in shifts. The air below deck grew thick and hot. Diseases spread quickly in the cramped quarters. But speed kept her safe. At 28 knots, she could outrun any German U-boat. Between 1940 and 1945, the Queen Mary carried more than 800,000 Allied troops across the Atlantic and to battlefields around the world. Winston Churchill himself crossed aboard her. So did thousands of American GIs who would never see home again. The ship's crew worked under wartime protocols. Speed was survival. Zigzag patterns confused submarines, and under no circumstances, no matter what happened, could the ship stop in hostile waters. To stop meant death for everyone aboard. This rule would be tested on the 2nd of October, 1942. The Queen Mary departed New York Harbor, carrying 10,000 American troops bound for Scotland. She sailed under radio silence, escorted by the cruiser HMS Curacoa and several destroyers. The convoy sailed in formation off the coast of Ireland. The sea was calm. Visibility was good. At 2:02 in the afternoon, the escort vessels began a planned zigzag maneuver. The Curacoa, positioned ahead of the Queen Mary, turned to port. According to naval procedure, the larger vessel had right of way. The cruiser should have turned away. It did not turn away. Witnesses on both ships saw what was about to happen. Sailors on the Curacoa pointed and shouted. Officers on the Queen Mary's bridge called for the cruiser to alter course. Neither ship could turn fast enough. The Queen Mary's reinforced bow, designed to cut through North Atlantic waves, struck the Curacoa amidships at 28 knots. The cruiser's hull split open. The ship broke into two pieces. The bow section rolled over within seconds. The stern section stayed afloat for 4 minutes. 338 men were aboard the Curacoa. 329 of them went into the water. The Queen Mary did not stop. She could not stop. Orders were absolute. 10,000 troops below deck depended on her reaching port. Stopping in hostile waters risked U-boat attack. The escorts would rescue survivors. But the Queen Mary's massive propellers had churned the water into chaos. Debris and bodies floated in a spreading oil slick. Survivors clung to wreckage and screamed. They watched the Queen Mary sail away. Some of them would later report that they could see faces looking back at them from the stern. Soldiers and crew, watching them drown. The escorting destroyers pulled 99 men from the water. Most died from injuries sustained in the impact or from hypothermia. Only 72 sailors survived. 266 men drowned or were killed in the collision. The Queen Mary arrived in Scotland with a dented bow and blood in her forward holds. Water had poured in through the damaged hull. Crew members found bodies in the lower compartments, bodies that had been pulled into the propeller wash and dragged along the hull until the ship reached port. The Royal Navy immediately classified the incident. A board of inquiry was convened in secret. Witness testimony was sealed. No blame was assigned to either vessel. The official conclusion stated that both ships shared responsibility for the collision. The report would remain classified for 30 years. The Queen Mary was repaired within 2 weeks and returned to service. She would make 194 more wartime crossings. But something had changed aboard the ship. Sailors reported hearing screams late at night, screams that seemed to come from below the waterline, from the forward sections where the impact had occurred. Engineers working in the bow compartments reported sudden drops in temperature. They felt watched. They felt unwelcome in spaces they had worked for years. The ship had obeyed orders. She had done what she was built to do: move forward, never stop. But the men left behind in the freezing Atlantic had not been given a choice. They died watching rescue sail away, and according to crew testimony from 1942 onward, they never stopped watching. The pattern emerges. After the war ended in 1945, the Queen Mary returned to civilian service. She was refitted once again. The gray paint was removed, the grand lounges restored, the swimming pools refilled. By 1947, she looked exactly as she had in 1936. But the deaths continued. Ship records, coroner reports, and crew interviews document at least 50 confirmed deaths aboard the Queen Mary between 1942 and 1967. Some were accidents, some were natural causes, many were violent, and they followed a pattern. Drownings occurred in the forward swimming pool with disturbing regularity. Between 1947 and 1963, 6 people drowned in the first-class pool. All were experienced swimmers. All were found floating face down in water that was only 5 feet deep. Witnesses reported that each victim appeared calm before entering the pool. They swam normally at first, then they simply stopped moving and sank. Lifeguards pulled them out within minutes. None could be revived. Medical examiners found no evidence of heart attacks, strokes, or seizures. The official cause of death in each case was listed as accidental drowning, but crew members who worked near the pool reported something else. They reported hearing children laughing in the pool area late at night, after the pool had been drained, after the lights had been turned off. Laughter echoing off tile walls, the sound of splashing water where there was no water. The engine rooms claimed even more lives. 18 men died in the machinery spaces between 1945 and 1967. Some fell from catwalks. Some were crushed between moving equipment. 3 were found dead at their stations with no visible injuries. The ship's medical logs noted that all 3 men appeared to have died from sudden cardiac arrest. All 3 were under 40 years old. All 3 were in good health. But the most documented death occurred in Engine Room 13 on the 18th of July, 1966. Engine Room 13 sits deep in the ship's hull, 3 decks below the waterline. It houses one of the main boiler systems and contains a watertight door designated Door 13. This door, like all watertight doors aboard the Queen Mary, operates on a hydraulic system. When activated, it closes with enough force to seal against flooding. It cannot be stopped once the closing sequence begins. John Pedder was 18 years old. He had joined the Queen Mary's crew as a fireman 3 months earlier. His job was to monitor pressure gauges and maintain the boilers in Engine Room 13. On the night of July 18th, he was working the overnight shift. According to the testimony of 2 other crew members present, Pedder was performing a routine check near Door 13 at approximately 3:20 in the morning. The door's warning bell began to sound. Protocol required all personnel to clear the doorway immediately. The door would begin closing in 10 seconds. Pedder turned toward the sound. He was standing directly in the door's path. The other crew members shouted. One of them reached for the emergency stop, but the hydraulic system had already engaged. The massive door began to close. Pedder tried to move. He slipped. He fell forward into the narrowing gap. The door crushed him against the frame. His screams stopped when the door sealed completely. The hydraulic system did not reverse. The safety mechanisms did not engage. And the door remained closed for 4 minutes before the emergency override finally opened it. John Pedder's body was removed from Engine Room 13 at 4:15 that morning. The official investigation concluded that he had failed to respond to warning signals in time. The door's safety systems were found to be functioning normally. No charges were filed. No blame was assigned. But crew members who worked in Engine Room 13 after Pedder's death began reporting consistent phenomena. They heard footsteps on the metal catwalks when no one else was present. They heard knocking from inside sealed compartments. And they saw him, a young man in blue coveralls, standing near Door 13, watching them work, always in the same position, always facing the door. When approached, he would vanish. Between 1966 and 1967, 4 different engineers reported identical sightings. Each described the same figure, same age, same clothing, same location. None of them knew about the others' reports. The ship's officers began keeping the reports in a separate file. They did not investigate. They did not question. They simply documented. The Queen Mary made her final transatlantic crossing on the 31st of October, 1967. She arrived in Long Beach, California on the 9th of December. She would never sail again. The city of Long Beach purchased the ship for $3.45 million, with plans to convert her into a floating hotel and museum. The conversion began immediately. Hundreds of rooms were renovated. Restaurants were opened in the old dining halls. The engine rooms were closed to the public but left intact. The swimming pools were drained and sealed. The Queen Mary opened to guests in May 1971. Within 3 months, the activity began. Hotel staff reported guest complaints about noise coming from neighboring rooms, footsteps pacing back and forth, voices having conversations, doors slamming. But when security checked, the rooms were empty. They had been empty all night. Guests in first-class cabin B340 complained about knocking on their door between midnight and 3 in the morning. Loud, insistent knocking. When they opened the door, no one was there. The hallway was empty. This happened to 7 different guests over a period of 2 years. Always the same cabin. Always the same hours. Always the same pattern of knocks. Security officers began keeping logs of anomalous activity. By 1975, the logs documented over 200 separate incidents. The reports showed clear patterns. Most activity occurred between midnight and 4 in the morning. Most incidents took place in specific locations. Engine Room 13, the first-class pool area, the forward bow sections, the crew quarters on D-deck. Security sweeps of these areas consistently found temperature drops of 15 to 20 degrees with no mechanical explanation. One security officer, hired in 1974, lasted 3 weeks. His resignation letter, preserved in the hotel's archives, stated that he had been physically pushed down a stairwell by an unseen force. He landed at the bottom with bruised ribs and a sprained ankle. He was alone in the stairwell, and the cameras showed him falling. They did not show what pushed him. By 1978, the Queen Mary's reputation as a haunted location was well established. Paranormal investigation teams began requesting access. The hotel management initially refused. They wanted to maintain the ship's image as a luxury destination, but the activity was impossible to contain. In 1980, a group of guests reported seeing a young woman in a white evening gown walking through the first-class lounge. She moved between tables as if looking for someone. When approached, she turned toward them. Her face was blue. Water dripped from her hair and dress. She walked through a closed door and disappeared. 3 different guests provided identical descriptions. None of them knew each other. Security footage from that night shows no one entering or leaving the lounge during the time frame they specified. The pattern was undeniable. The Queen Mary was not experiencing random hauntings. She was experiencing systematic manifestations tied directly to her history. The locations of activity corresponded to locations of documented deaths. The apparitions matched descriptions of people who had died aboard. The phenomena repeated with mechanical precision. The ship had become a monument to her dead, and they had never disembarked. The peak horror. The first formal paranormal investigation of the Queen Mary occurred in October 1982, exactly 40 years after the Curacoa collision. A team of researchers from the American Society for Psychical Research spent 72 hours aboard the ship. They focused on the areas with the highest concentration of reported activity. They brought electromagnetic field detectors, thermal cameras, and audio recording equipment. They interviewed staff members and reviewed security logs. They documented everything. On the second night of the investigation, at 2:37 in the morning, 3 team members were conducting a sweep of Engine Room 13. Their equipment registered a sudden temperature drop of 18 degrees. The EMF detectors spiked simultaneously, and their audio recorder captured something that would be analyzed and reanalyzed for years. A voice, male, young, speaking clearly despite significant background noise. The voice said, get out now, the door." 10 seconds later, the hydraulic system for door 13 activated without input from any control panel. The door began to close. The researchers evacuated the engine room. They reviewed the footage and audio recordings. The activation was not mechanical failure. The door's control systems showed no malfunction. Something had triggered the closing sequence. The voice on the recording was sent to audio forensics experts. They confirmed it was not any member of the research team. They confirmed it came from within engine room 13. They could not explain it. The investigation team returned for a third night. This time, they set up cameras in the first-class pool area. The pool had been drained since 1967. It was completely dry. Lights were positioned to eliminate shadows. Cameras covered every angle. At 1:14 in the morning, all 3 cameras captured the same thing. The surface of the empty pool began to ripple, as if water was present, as if something was moving beneath a surface that did not exist. The ripples moved from the shallow end to the deep end in a clear pattern. Then they stopped. The cameras kept recording. At 1:22, the sound of children's laughter filled the pool area. It was captured on multiple audio devices. It lasted for 37 seconds. Then silence. The investigation team presented their findings in a report published in 1983. Their conclusion was carefully worded. They stated that the Queen Mary exhibited consistent anomalous phenomena that could not be explained by environmental factors, mechanical malfunctions, or suggestion. They stopped short of declaring the ship haunted, but their data supported no other explanation. Other teams followed. Between 1983 and 2010, over 40 paranormal investigation groups studied the Queen Mary. Their findings were remarkably consistent. Engine Room 13 produced more documented phenomena than any other location. Temperature anomalies, equipment malfunctions, apparitions, and the recurring presence of a young man in coveralls who appeared most frequently between 3 and 4 in the morning, the time John Pedder died. But the most disturbing reports came from areas not open to the public. Maintenance crews working in the forward sections, near the bow where the Curacoa collision occurred, reported being chased from the area by overwhelming feelings of dread. Some described hearing screams. Others reported seeing groups of men in naval uniforms moving through corridors that had been sealed since the 1960s. When these figures were approached, they would turn and walk through walls. One maintenance supervisor, interviewed in 2006, described an encounter that ended his career aboard the ship. He had been conducting a safety inspection in a sealed forward compartment on D-deck. The area was used for storage and was rarely accessed. He was alone. As he worked, he heard footsteps behind him. Multiple sets of footsteps. Boots on metal decking. He turned. He saw approximately 20 men in dark uniforms standing in the corridor. They were soaking wet. Water dripped from their clothes and pooled on the floor. They were staring at him, not moving, just staring. He described their faces as young, expressionless. Their eyes were fixed on him with what he called absolute attention. He said he knew, without understanding how, that they were waiting. They had been waiting for a very long time. He walked backward toward the exit. The men did not follow. They simply watched him leave. When he reached the door and looked back, they were gone. The corridor was empty, but the water remained. Pools of seawater on the floor of a sealed compartment 3 decks above the water line. Security was called. They found the water. They found his footprints. They found no explanation for how seawater entered a sealed, dry compartment. The supervisor resigned 2 days later. He refused to discuss the incident further. This pattern, men in naval uniforms appearing in groups and always wet, has been reported by at least 12 different witnesses between 1971 and the present day. All sightings occurred in forward sections of the ship. All descriptions match the uniforms worn by sailors aboard HMS Curacoa. In 1998, a paranormal research team attempted to make contact using historical records and period-specific naval protocols. They gathered in a forward compartment near where the collision impact occurred. They read aloud the names of the 266 men who died when the Curacoa sank. All 266 names. According to their report, the temperature in the compartment dropped to 41 degrees. Their breath became visible, and they heard, recorded on multiple devices, the sound of men crying. Not screaming, crying, quiet, exhausted, hopeless. The recording lasts 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Audio analysis confirmed it contained multiple distinct voices. None matched the research team members. The voices faded gradually, as if moving away down a corridor. But the compartment they were recording in was sealed. There was nowhere to go. The team attempted to communicate. They asked questions. They received no response. The crying continued, then stopped. The temperature returned to normal over the next 20 minutes. The research team concluded their report with a statement that remains relevant today. They wrote, "The phenomena aboard the Queen Mary are not random hauntings. They are systematic manifestations of trauma. The ship does not simply host spirits, it holds them, and they cannot leave. Attempts to cleanse or reduce the activity have all failed. In 2004, a religious group obtained permission to perform a blessing ceremony throughout the ship. They blessed Engine Room 13, the pool areas, and the forward compartments. They prayed for the souls of those who died. They asked for peace. The activity increased. Within 2 weeks, staff reported the highest concentration of incidents ever recorded. Doors throughout the ship opened and closed without explanation. Cold zones appeared in areas that had previously shown no activity. Guests reported being touched, pushed, and spoken to. 3 separate guests checked out early, claiming they had been physically attacked by invisible forces in their rooms. The activity eventually returned to normal levels, but the blessing had changed nothing. If anything, it had provoked a response, a reminder that whatever remained aboard the Queen Mary was not seeking peace. It was seeking acknowledgement. The ship remembers. That is the only conclusion that fits the evidence. The Queen Mary remembers everyone who died within her hull. She remembers the collision. She remembers sailing away. She remembers the decision to keep moving forward while men drowned behind her. And she has become a vessel, not just of memory, but of presence. The dead have not left, because they were never given the chance. The legacy and unresolved terror. The Queen Mary remains docked in Long Beach, California. She has been there for 57 years. She functions as a hotel, museum, and event venue. Over 1 million people visit annually, and the activity continues. Recent reports, documented in security logs and guest reviews, show no decrease in phenomena. If anything, the manifestations have become more bold. In 2019, a hotel guest recorded video in cabin B340, the room with a long history of midnight knocking. The video, uploaded to social media and verified as authentic, shows the cabin door from inside the room. At 12:43 in the morning, the door handle begins to turn. Slowly, deliberately, the door is locked. The handle continues to turn for 11 seconds, then stops, then turns again. Knocking begins. 6 knocks. Pause. 6 knocks. This pattern repeats 4 times. Then silence. The guest opened the door while recording. The hallway was empty. Security footage from the corridor shows no one approached the door during that time period. The handle was turning from the inside, or from nowhere at all, to engine room. 13 is now part of the ship's haunted tour. Guests descend into the engine room with guides who explain the history and the phenomena. The tours avoid sensationalism, focusing instead on documented facts. They describe John Pedder's death. They describe the sightings. They do not embellish. And frequently, they experience phenomena firsthand. Tour guides report that approximately 30% of their groups experience something anomalous in Engine Room 13. Temperature drops, equipment failures, the sound of footsteps on the catwalks above them. Some guests report seeing a figure in blue coveralls standing near door 13. The sightings last only seconds, but they are consistent. Same location, same description, same young man who died there 58 years ago. The first-class pool area, when sealed and dry since 1967, remains one of the most active locations. Security cameras positioned in the area for monitoring purposes have captured unexplained phenomena on multiple occasions. Shadows moving across the empty pool floor with no source. The sound of splashing water recorded on audio, but with no visual confirmation. And in 2021, a camera captured what appeared to be a small handprint appearing on the pool's tile wall. It remained visible for 4 minutes, then faded. Historians and psychologists have attempted to explain the Queen Mary's hauntings through conventional frameworks. They point to the power of suggestion, the influence of prior knowledge, the human tendency to find patterns in random events. They argue that a ship with such a dark history naturally inspires fear and imagination. But these explanations fail to account for the consistency of the reports. They fail to explain why independent witnesses, separated by decades and with no knowledge of previous incidents, describe identical phenomena in identical locations. They fail to explain the physical evidence, the temperature changes, the audio recordings, the video documentation. Some researchers have proposed a theory of place memory, the idea that locations can absorb and replay traumatic events like a recording. That the Queen Mary, built of metal and machinery, somehow captured the energy of violent deaths and continues to manifest them. This theory treats the hauntings as mechanical, impersonal, a function of physics we do not yet understand. But the witnesses describe something different. They describe intelligence, intent, awareness. The figures seen aboard the Queen Mary do not simply repeat actions. They respond, they watch, they interact. The young man in Engine Room 13 appears most often to maintenance workers, people who share his role. The naval officers in the forward sections appear in groups, maintaining formation, still following orders. The children heard in the pool area laugh and play, as if unaware they are dead. These are not recordings. These are presences. The Queen Mary is not haunted because she is old. Ships older than her rest peacefully in harbors around the world. She is not haunted because of her wartime service. Other troop ships carried troops and saw combat without becoming eternal monuments to their dead. The Queen Mary is haunted because she carries unresolved death, because 329 men drowned watching her sail away, because 50 more died within her hull over 3 decades, many violently, many alone, because she was built to move forward and never look back, and that same momentum trapped those who could not keep up. She is a machine that obeyed orders, a vessel that prioritized mission over mercy, and the price of that obedience was paid by others, by men who drowned, by workers crushed in machinery, by passengers who slipped beneath the water in pools that should have been safe. they paid with their lives, and they remain to collect their due. The ship sits in Long Beach Harbor today, permanent, immobile, transformed from the fastest liner on the Atlantic to a stationary monument. She can no longer outrun anything, not pursuit, not consequence, not memory. The decks remain active. Security patrols report encounters weekly. Guests report phenomena nightly. The patterns continue. The manifestations persist. And everyone who works aboard long enough comes to the same conclusion. The Queen Mary is not a haunted ship. She is a prison. For those who died, for those who were abandoned, for those who obeyed and those who were crushed by obedience. They are bound to her hull, and she is bound to them. Docking her did not end anything. It only made her location permanent. Some structures involved in mass death become more than architecture. They become vessels of unresolved trauma. They become stages where the past performs endlessly for anyone willing to watch. The Queen Mary has stood witness to hundreds of deaths. She has carried soldiers to war and corpses to port. She has sailed through blood and fire and returned to luxury as if nothing happened. But the dead remember, and they are still aboard. There are places in this world where the past does not fade, where decisions made decades ago continue to echo, where the weight of unacknowledged death grows heavier with time. The Queen Mary is such a place. She was built to conquer the Atlantic. She was built to be unsinkable, unstoppable, untouchable. She succeeded. She crossed the ocean 1,000 times. She survived war and peace. She transported millions of people safely. But safety came at a cost, and costs, when unpaid, compound. 329 sailors drowned in 1942 because a ship could not stop. 50 more died because machinery does not care about human fragility. And all of them remain because the ship that carried them forward never learned to look back. The Queen Mary sits in California today, permanent, inescapable, a monument to power and engineering and everything those things require us to sacrifice. She is visited by thousands who come to sleep in her cabins and walk her decks and stand in the places where people died. And sometimes, late at night, when the tours have ended and the guests are sleeping, the ship reveals what she has become. Not a hotel, not a museum, but a vessel still carrying her cargo, still moving forward even while standing still, still obeying orders that were given 80 years ago. The dead have not disembarked, the voyage has not ended, and the Queen Mary, for all her power and speed and glory, has become exactly what she created, a place where no one can escape, not even her. The footsteps continue, the doors still close, the voices still call from sealed compartments, and every night, somewhere in the darkness of her hull, men in naval uniforms stand in formation and wait, still waiting, still watching, still aboard the ship that sailed away and never came back for them. She is docked, but she has not stopped, and she never will.